Didn't work out too well.
President Trump appears to be referring to the Saturday Night Massacre, a chapter in the Watergate scandal which saw the U.S. Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General both resign rather than fire the special prosecutor. President Trump often points to the Mueller report, saying the investigation found no collusion with Russia during the 2016 campaign, but voters appear to be unconvinced.
In the battle for public opinion, though, new Fox News polls show that the president still has his work cut out for him on this issue. A record 50% of registered voters believe the Trump campaign coordinated with Russia during the 2016 election.
Fox's Garrett Tenney at the White House. The Fox News poll shows former Vice President Joe Biden still holds the top position among the Democratic hopefuls, followed by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Many Democratic candidates were on the campaign trail in Charleston, South Carolina, visiting the site of a mass shooting 4 years ago.
New Jersey Senator Cory Booker attended Sunday services at Mother Emanuel, which he called an incredible church in an incredible community. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren praised the congregation and the people of Charleston for responding to a terrible tragedy by bringing the community together and standing for racial, social, and economic justice. Warren was speaking at a presidential candidates forum hosted by the Black Economic Alliance, in which the presidential candidates presented their plans for increasing opportunities for minorities.
Fox's Jonathan Seri in Charleston. Philadelphia police say one person is dead and at least 7 others, including 4 teenagers, were shot during a graduation party. No arrests have been made. This is Fox News.
We have some really great home loan programs, but did you know we have great business loans too? Every day we're working with companies to purchase equipment, to buy or build properties, or make tenant improvements. We offer letters of credit, working capital, and term loans, and we make all of our credit decisions here. Commercial loans, commercial banking from Bank Pacific.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
Hey, it's Mom. Somebody forgot to thaw the chicken, so meet us at Chili's for 2 for $25. Oh, and congratulate your sister for making the basketball team. She's thrilled. Love you. See you at Chili's.
Enjoy 2 full meal combos for $25. An appetizer, 2 mouth-watering entrees like our crispy chicken breast, smoked barbecue quarter leg, or smoked jalapeno cheddar sausage. Served with corn on the cob and french fries. 2 bold combos for $25. A full-on meal deal available nightly for a limited time. Together, we Chili's.
Another American has died in the Dominican Republic, making at least 8. Layla Cox went there to celebrate her 53rd birthday but never came back. Dominican officials say she died of a heart attack, but her son tells Fox and Friends he wants to see a toxicology report.
They told me all their toxicology machines were broken. I found that out from the U.S. Embassy. Miss Garcia told me that. She said all the toxicology machines are broken, and we do not know when we will get them fixed. I was already suspicious beforehand, but that all but confirmed my suspicions that something is not right here. I mean, how can a whole country's toxicology machines be broken?
He says his mother never had a heart condition. An off-duty police officer shot and killed someone inside a Costco in Corona, California Friday night. Investigators say the officer opened fire after another man assaulted him as he held his young son. A family member says the victim was mentally disabled. A poor showing at the box office for franchise reboots.
Not much hope for a summer blockbuster movie.
Men in Black has been compromised and trusts no one.
The Men in Black International reboot just squeezing into first place with a limp $28.5 million. Meanwhile, a surprising 6th place finish for this franchise name.
I'm looking for Chef.
Who's asking?
John Chef Jr., your son.
My son? Junior?
Yeah.
The much-anticipated Shaft with Samuel L. Jackson and Richard Roundtree earning only $8.3 million. Rounding out the top 5, The Secret Life of Pets 2 in second place. After 4 weeks on the screens, Aladdin sits in the number 3 position. Number 4, Dark Phoenix, and completing the top 5, Rocket Man. I'm Mike Piazza, Fox News.
A driver survived a 150-foot drop off a California cliff. Rescue teams in Pacifica rappelled down the side of the cliff to reach the victim. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant.
Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yeah. Did I say that with a, was I emphatic enough there, Real Joe Cruz?
That's how it's done, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Real Joe Cruz. That's exactly how it's done. Because we put an awful lot of stock in the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, as with all other parts of the United States Constitution, and with the other 9 amendments that make up the Bill of Rights. I, here on Tall Tales, am a constitutionalist, believing that adherence to the United States Constitution is the way to go, that a government that adheres to the United States Constitution and concentrates its efforts on securing and protecting the rights of its citizens is what we're all looking for. So we start every day with the Second Amendment, perhaps in order to put emphasis on those thoughts. And after I finish the Second Amendment, I usually have a little vignette dealing with the Second Amendment, something that someone else has written about the greatness of the Second Amendment, the greatness of those who support it, the flawed logic of those who oppose it, and gun rights in general. Today, I'm going to go back to something I read on Friday and expand upon it a little bit. On Friday, I read something from the website Bearing Arms, written by Tom Knighton, K-N-I-G-H-T-O-N, Knighton, who is the proprietor of Bearing Arms. And Tom made the suggestion last Friday that we should make July Gun Pride Month. And Tom suggested, a parade on the 4th of July. I picked that up and ran with it. And I suggested that what we ought to do, what our government really should do, would be to post the national NRA flag. If you're watching on Facebook, you can see it there. To post the NRA flag in front of Government House, prominently, perhaps a couple hundred flags. Legislature should do the same thing. We should have the same thing up at Government House. We should have a big parade on July 4th and encourage all of the gun rights advocates here on the island to march in the parade, shouldering their rifles or carrying their pistols, perhaps at Present Arms, gun rights. And I thought about it a little bit, and I said, well, yeah, this makes sense. If there is something that you are proud of, you probably deserve to have a month where everyone celebrates what you are proud of. They don't necessarily have to be proud themselves, but they should be put on notice that you are proud. So you gun rights advocates, you Second Amendment buffs, you champions of the Bill of Rights, this is your chance. The Gun Rights Pride Month and the Gun Rights Parade. And then I expanded upon it a little farther. Our government should be going out and beating the bushes, searching off island, perhaps an international search to find a qualified armorer to move to Guam. Now, we have people here that have some of the skills of an armorer. There are people who can repair your rifle or perhaps repair your pistol. There are those who can install scope sights, etc. But as far as I know, and I did a little checking around on Saturday, we don't have a full-fledged armorer here. Perhaps there is one somewhere in the military establishment, but as far as I know, they are not moonlighting. So, everyone has a Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Doesn't it make sense that the government should go out and find an armorer for the territory? Maybe Governor Lilian Guerrero could task Jane Flores with that job, to go out and find an armorer for the island of Guam. Advertise in all of the gun magazines, and perhaps get together with have a closed door meeting with the chief of police and discuss it with him to see if he could help. And then perhaps she could send an email to the NRA asking the NRA, can you send an armorer out here? Start a local chapter? We really need you guys out here. So that's the Second Amendment. I'll probably be talking about this tomorrow too, because I think a Gun Pride Month is really, really important for all of those who are proud to, in accordance with a constitutional amendment, be gun supporters and Second Amendment supporters. And the fact that they're proud ought to be sufficient cause for the government to express its recognition of that pride. Well, we'll see how that one goes. And boy, this Marcus is really quick on the draw, isn't he? Yeah, I hardly had a chance to say, keep and bear arms, and he's on the line. Yeah, well, I guess you got here just in time, Marcus.
Oh, nice. Senor Klitzkie, thank you to Judas Mosby. Yeah, I did the NRA course in Oregon for a concealed weapons license, and was thankful to get one. And I do have I'm more thankful that I have my 2 arms and 2 feet that still work. And but I do have a nice Taurus Judge that's got a gold trigger and a gold hammer and a gold release, a double action revolver. Shoots the 3-inch long 45 and 410 shells. And in the event that I ever have to use it, which I pray I never do, not for self-defense or anything like that, or to defend others, but it is a right, and it is something that we, should be trained and willing to offer our assistance to those that are in need. You know what I mean?
I do. So maybe as this Gun Rights Pride Month shapes up, and we get closer to the 4th of July, if I'm asked, I might nominate you to be the Grand Marshal of the Gun Rights Parade.
Yeah, and then I'll throw them over those rainbow flags that we got all over the place, and we can celebrate something that's a little bit more substantial.
Yeah, well, there's the old dietary rule for geese, right? The dietary rule for geese is what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you're celebrating that this month, and I'm again thankful for you probably were the instigator, or because of your information and what you pointed out the other day, the PDN picked up on Sunday, and that was something that was, hats off to all those that, who stood out there and protested the abortionists and brought to the attention and to the light of our people that this is something that's not very good for the island. And, the claim that we're suffering because, we have to travel thousands of miles when all we have to do is travel 50 miles if someone really needed that kind of service. And, whatever. But we need more cancer doctors and pediatricians and neurosurgeons.
And an armorer, too, right?
Yes, and an armorer. The Guam Air National Guard used to have a Chief Master Sergeant Perez and some other guys that actually know all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew when I was in the Guard, I knew the armorer at that time, but I don't think he's in private practice. So maybe, there are people that need an armorer, but there aren't any that are practicing here. So it's the government's job to go out and find one, right, Marquez?
Yes, again. It's time to serve the people and not just tell us what to do all the time.
Right.
Taxes for it.
Okay, well, thanks for your support for the Gun Rights Parade and Gun Rights Pride Parade, and I'll keep you posted, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for calling. Okay, so that's Mark. I would pronounce it Marcus, Marquez, Marcus, right? All right, so we finished the Second Amendment portion of the program and the Gun Rights Pride Month portion of the program. Let's go to Zemi Ikotny. Yeah, it's a pretty lively tune, isn't it, Real Joe Cruz?
It is, sir.
Yeah, just like the rest of Tall Tales. It really kind of sets the tone for Tall Tales, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right, Jimmy Codney. You all know that Jimmy Codney, I take a look at the editorials. I look for grammatical mistakes, and I usually find them. Poor usage of the language. Sometimes I find it. And content and delivery. And having determined the better of the two editorials, I would award it the coveted Blue Star, which has been the source of great pride and joy in the editorial boardroom of the winning newspaper. And I suspect there have been some long faces in the editorial boardroom of the losing newspaper. So far, the score is 114 for the Daily News, and I think it's 41 for the Post. I think it's 41 for the PDN. The PDN is, of course, most of the time the PDN doesn't even try. Today is a fine example. This is what the PDN has run on the editorial of the Pacific Daily News. And I read it right. At first, when I read the title of the editorial, I thought maybe they misspelled the word Potomac, because this editorial would fit better on the editorial page of the Potomac Daily News. McConnell buries plans to protect U.S. elections. Now, that really has a lot of local impact, doesn't it? We're really concerned about what Mitch McConnell is doing with respect to our elections for president, senator, and representative. You know, that darn Mitch McConnell. And I'm just going to read the first line of it because it's so typical of the Gannett take on government. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell likes to boast that he's the Grim Reaper, bedeviling a chamber where progressive legislation from House Democrats comes to die. Well, good for Mitch McConnell. Progressive legislation. I've seen enough progressive legislation to. If I were 40 years old instead of 80, I could still say the same thing. I've seen enough progressive legislation to last me for the rest of my life. It wouldn't bother me if I never saw any more progressive legislation. So if that's what you're hanging on Mitch McConnell, good for Mitch McConnell. But once again, how relevant is it to those of us who live here? We care about national elections. And, of course, we're affected by national elections. But this doesn't come close to meeting the criteria that I have established for good editorials. There's nothing here that we can sink our teeth into. So it's the classic, in two regards, it's the classic Daily News, Gannett, USA Today editorial. It's not about us. And, you know, Real Joe Cruz, although I don't like to talk about myself, sometimes I have to.
Yeah, especially when it's about you.
Yeah. But I do like to talk about us.
Okay.
Yeah. Us means 160,000 plus of us living on, you know, the most enchanted piece of real estate in the world here in Guam, where the American flag flies, and a very important part of America. And I want to read about us. I don't want to read about how much you hate the Republicans, Mr. Gannett. I think you've pretty well shown us that. So you're not even in the running again. However, I apply the Mark corollary to the judging process here, and that is that the blue star never goes by default. If it did, I probably wouldn't even have to read the editorials. I could just look at the headlines of the Daily News and say, well, this is the one of the 4 out of 5 or 6 times that during the week that they don't run their own. They just copy something else or run something else from Gannett. But here's what the Post says today. We agree with the public auditor. Plug tobacco tax collection loophole. Plug the tobacco tax collection loophole. Plug that loophole. Maybe you could do it with a plug of chewing tobacco. Sometimes the most practical ideas are right before us, but we don't see them right away, the Post says. This applies to the Department of Rev Tax dilemma. It wants to hire more tax enforcers, but a big chunk of its money is being sucked dry by the 40% rent increase for its main office, which costs more than $1.3 million a year, even when it used to be a warehouse. So we're paying over $1 million a year for something that used to be a warehouse. Rev Tax challenge with funding more tax enforcers was discussed at a legislative meeting Wednesday. After learning of this and to help Rev Tax pay for more tax enforcers, Public Auditor B.J. Cruz, who held the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee chairmanship for years, offered a solution. Collect more tobacco taxes by plugging a tax collection loophole. I've heard that before. In fact, one of the gubernatorial candidates last year said, we don't need any new taxes. We've just got to collect the taxes that are on the books. Who was that, Real Joe Cruz?
Was that the governor who said that?
I believe it was Lulian Guerrero, yeah, when she wanted to be governor.
Yeah, I believe
she was telling us about all the wonderful things she would do when she got to be governor.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And then it goes on to say, collect more tobacco taxes by plugging a tax collection loophole. Now, lawyers, of course, know an awful lot about loopholes. One of the I've mentioned my toolkit. One of the tools in my toolkit is an ultrasonic detector that you could just flash it over a pile of documents and it would find the loophole in any law. Yeah. So Cruz suggested to Senator Sabina Paris, chairman of the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation and Procurement, to repeal the tobacco tax provision requiring bonded warehouses. By repealing this provision, tobacco tax collections will improve and fairness will be promoted among the island's five tobacco wholesalers. The bonded warehouse arrangement has allowed tobacco wholesalers to delay tax payments on products until after they are discharged from the bonded warehouses. However, in a 2018 audit report, auditors found that there were instances where the department was not assessing the tobacco tax during the storage and withdrawal of tobacco from the bonded warehouse. DRT was also not verifying the wholesalers' tax filings against the release of tobacco products from the warehouse for retail, the audit found. So a bonded warehouse, you unload your pallets of cigarettes and you put them in this bonded warehouse. Bonded means that someone has posted a bond in a large sum of money guaranteeing that none of those products leave the warehouse until the tax is paid. You lock them up, etc. But that didn't work out so well. In light of recent headlines pertaining to the Department of Revenue and Taxation staffing, technology needs, and tax collection efforts, I think it's an appropriate time to review and repeal the provisions of the law requiring bonded warehouses, Cruz said. By repealing the need for bonded warehouses, we could improve tax collections by taxing all tobacco products when they arrive on our shores. This will eliminate the need for DRT employees to verify what comes in and out of the bonded warehouse and free them up to pursue other priorities of the agency, like hanging out at the carnival, maybe. This also helps to streamline tobacco tax collections and avert a repeat of an alleged tax evasion scheme stated in a lawsuit. The lawsuit, filed by whistleblower Frank San Augustine earlier this year, has alleged a tax evasion scheme stemming from the alleged underreporting and unpaid tobacco tax of $13 million. The lawsuit alleges an unnamed tobacco wholesaler sold or illegally gave away tens of thousands of cartons of cigarettes after they were moved from bonded warehouses into the retail stream and did not pay taxes as required by law, court documents state. Bonded warehouses might have seemed like a good idea many years ago, but now tax enforcement needs to try something new. If it's working only to the detriment of the public, it needs to be fixed. Well, good for BJ. You know, BJ has spent an awful lot of time at the game of government, and he knows it backwards, forwards, inside out, and upside down. And I'm glad that he's a public auditor because he can spot things like this, and having been there before, doesn't have any problem going over to the legislature saying, hey, guys, this is what you need to do. So a pretty good editorial. Something that we need to know, something that's timely, and a good call to action, something we can sink our teeth into. So, of course, no competition whatsoever from the Daily News. So the coveted Blue Star goes to the Guam Post. Yeah. Guam Post. And let me see what the score is going to look like here. Yeah, this makes 118 for the Guam Post, 42 for the Daily News. You got to try harder, Daily News. Well, actually, half the time it's not try harder, you just got to try. Okay, so next I come to the card. I guess I'll wait a few minutes before I go to the card. I'm going to do the Charleston for a few minutes here before we do that.
Business travel just got easier. Take your data plan with you for only $10 a day to all 17 Data to Go destinations. Never worry about additional data roaming charges when you go where your business needs you. The US, China, Thailand, and so much more. Have the assurance you need to check emails, surf the web, and stay connected. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your account is Data to Go ready. Docomo Pacific. Better together.
Liberate your mind with laughter. Budweiser presents Hypnosis Comedy coming to Guam Liberation Weekend.
Half a day, Guam. I am comedian hypnotist Rich Guzzi, and I can't wait to see you July 20th and 22nd at the Sheraton Laguna Hotel.
With local comedy legend Frank Rios opening the show. $25 general admission, $35 for VIPs. Tickets on sale at 76 Circle K stations and at Coffee Slut. Special thanks to Community First, the Guam Daily Post, Delta Tires, Trivision, and Choice Broadcasting.
You will have the time of your life.
Liberate your mind with laughter is a GSPN production.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Superpowers of Truth. Yep, that's me. So while you're looking at your Facebook page there, how about clicking on that share arrow up there and share Tall Tales with all your friends? They'll be grateful to you for a long, long time. If they aren't already Tall Tales buffs, do them a favor and bring them in. Okay, so on the card today, I've got Campus Wokesters versus Gibson's Bakery. And I've got Michelle Armenta versus Jane Flores. And actually, this is just kind of an amalgamation of several card items. Michelle Armenta versus Jane Flores. Tall Tales versus Abortion Procurement, Maria Espinosa versus Lou and Jane, Lou versus Babies. And then after that, I've got Bavacqua versus King George the Straw Man. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that exciting card. Before I go there, I'm going to go to the poetry corner for a moment. I'm sure you all remember that Tall Tales has a poet laureate. His name is Andrew, and limericks are his strong suit, but just poetry in general, something he's pretty good at. He's been concentrating lately on oxymorons. Now, if you're not familiar with the term oxymoron, this is going to be the slightly educational part of the program. An oxymoron is a pair of words that seem to contradict one another. As an example, jumbo shrimp. You know, a shrimp is something that's small, so how could something that's small be a jumbo shrimp? But the word oxymoron itself is oxymoronic. The word is derived from two ancient Greek words, oxys, which means sharp, and moronos, which means dull or stupid. So something that's an oxymoron is both sharp and dull, smart and stupid. I'm not talking about the legislature now. I'm talking about different kinds of words. And I've got some examples here of oxymorons. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a deafening silence in the room. Or, whenever you're in that situation, just act naturally, real Joe Cruz. Yeah. And, if you act naturally, people will think that you're awfully good. I mean, that's kind of a bittersweet way of looking at things, isn't it? Yeah, so I've got a whole list of oxymorons here. The odds are even. It's an example. Or he was found, after a long absence, he was found missing. But I made one up myself that I'm going to send off to these various word banks, right? See how you like this one, Real Joe Cruz. He was a homeschooled dormer. Okay? Yeah. Sounds like something you would have come up with, right?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. A homeschooled dormer. Okay, so oxymoron. So last week, Andrew came up with this one. He said, our Bob is a very tall gnome, right? We're so happy that he is at home talking on his great show, keeping us in the know, and his name is a short palindrome. So a very tall gnome. And he followed that up the next day with the obverse of the gnome limerick. Our Bob is a very short giant. A short giant, yeah. Of wisdom and truth he's reliant. His feathers don't ruffle. He solves tough kerfuffles. Be grateful if you are his client. And then he comes back today with the third oxymoronic limerick in a row. And here's what he said. Our Bob's an obese anorexic whose schedule is grueling and hectic. His sweet tooth loves seas, nuts and chews, if you please. He's one cool cat, never pyrexic. Yeah, so an anorexic is one who kind of starves himself because he thinks he's too obese. I guess you could be an obese anorexic. I guess maybe that isn't an oxymoron. It kind of seems like it, though. But and I do really like See's Candy. I'm going to see if we can get See's Candy to sponsor this program. Because that'd be one product I could really endorse with vigor, especially when they're talking See's Candy, nuts and chews, right, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. And then the word pyrexic. He's one cool cat, never pyrexic. Pyrexic is a fancy word for feverish. Nope, I'm not feverish. I'm not pyrexic today. Okay, let's go right into the card. And I start out here with Campus Wokesters versus Gibson's Bakery. And this is something I got from a website called LouRockwell.com. If you're a libertarian, you might want to go to LouRockwell.com. It's a great website. Campus Wokesters with boundary problems got woke for real on Thursday when an Ohio jury laid an additional $33 million for punitive damages on top of an $11 million in compensatory damages already awarded against Oberlin College for running a social justice campaign to ruin the business of a 4-generation small-town bakery that followed the shoplifting arrest of 3 black Oberlin College students there in 2016. Well, you just read this first paragraph. How can this be? 3 black people were arrested for shoplifting. First of all, that can't be right. They should not have been arrested. That's not right. And then a jury in a jury trial awards $11 million against Campus Wokesters and comes back now with a $33 million for punitive damages judgment. So here's what happened. The precipitating incident happened the day after the presidential election, when Oberlin College campus suffered a collective emotional breakdown over the election results. You can imagine what it was like on a lot of these lefty campuses, after the votes were counted and they found out Hillary didn't break the glass ceiling. Gibson's Bakery on the Oberlin Town Square, which also sells wine and deli products, has been a fixture in downtown Oberlin, Ohio for generations. 3 students first tried to buy wine with a fake ID, and failing to do that, attempted to walk out with 2 bottles. They were followed outside by the bakery family members, Alan Gibson. I was going to say Ray Gibson, but then I thought, nah, Ray's on vacation. A fight ensued. Police arrested the kids. The college attempted to steer the case out of the court system but failed. The 3 students eventually pled guilty in August of 2017 to theft and aggravated trespassing, and were required by their plea agreements to declare that they had behaved wrongfully and that the bakery was not a racist establishment. End of story, right? Well, kids try to cob off with a couple of bottles of wine. They got caught. The court gave them a break, let them plead. End of story, right? What more is there to tell? Let's go on. There's nothing to see here. Just keep moving. But no, that wasn't the end of the story, because Oberlin College Dean of Students Meredith Raimundo had organized students, faculty, and staff to mount days of demonstrations outside Gibson's Bakery, accusing it of racism and systematically profiling of black students. At times, Ms. Raimundo appeared to lead the demonstration with a bullhorn and handed out leaflets labeling Gibson's as racist. The college also dropped its business arrangement with Gibson's, which had supplied the college with donuts and bagels for decades. Gibson's then sued both Oberlin College and Ms. Raimundo in particular for libel and for attempting to ruin its business. The Oberlin case is of a piece with the widespread dishonest, despotic, and sadistic behavior syndrome that has roiled college campuses all over the country. You read about it every day, and infected every corner of national life, including the giant social media companies, the corporate HR departments, the entire Democratic Party, virtually all show business, and the U.S. military. Wokesterism employs the same tactics used by Mao Zedong's Red Guard during China's Cultural Revolution of the 1960s. Oberlin's lame defense in the penalty phase of the court case was to plead poverty despite a $1 million endowment at a school which charges $70,000 a year to attend. The punitive damages required the jury to find actual malice in the college's behavior. In fact, the jury's award of $33.2 million exceeded a statutory Ohio damages cap of double the compensatory damages. In many cases, like Oberlin's around the nation, such as the mob that attacked author Charles Murphy, the author of a study called The Bell Curve at Middlebury College, the mobs that drove out biology professor Brett Weinstein at Evergreen College, the mob that bullied Nicholas Christakis at Yale, the serial mobs that disrupted many speakers at UC Berkeley. The mysterious common denominator is the acquiescence of college presidents and other authorities to the hysteria of the moment. The truth is they were AWOL at best and often complicit in the action. The uproar at Oberlin may have been triggered by the dismaying election results of 2016, but a lot of this quasi-religious hysteria has been going on since long before the much reviled Mr. Trump came on the scene. Campus deans and presidents have a lot to answer for. Until now, they have all skated neatly from scrutiny with the help of an amazingly incurious news media. The hefty dollar judgment against Oberlin may be a caution to other college administrators across the land that there are actually consequences for their cowardly and dishonorable behavior. So that's quite a story. The wokesters got put in their place. The college president and the college itself, after attempting to drive this family-owned business out of business. And, of course, this is not the first time we've seen people picking on bakeries. We've seen wokesters picking on bakeries. And here's a note. The New York Times did not even report the final disposition of the Oberlin lawsuit the day after the jury's punitive award. They don't want to know about it. They don't want you to know about it. The omission tells you everything you need to know about the descent of the old liberalism into a new delusion, into a maw of delusion and bad faith, and the appalling failures of institutional leadership across the U.S. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Gifinut tomorrow night, hey, Oberlin College, Benetsua. You got what you deserved. Okay, so we go from there to the next item on the card, which is the first title is Michelle Armenta versus Jane Flores. And Michelle Armenta was interviewed by the Post on Saturday at the rally that the pro-life folks had at Government House. I've contrasted what Michelle told the Post with some of the quotes from Jane Flores. And here's what Michelle said. The message here is to show the governor and the administration that we, as the people of Guam, don't approve of trying so hard to bring a doctor over to have abortions readily available. Jane Flores, the director of Bureau of Women Affairs, has been tasked with finding a replacement to ensure abortion services are available on the island. Flores said, a woman's right to choose is paramount. Means it comes ahead or above, paramount. It comes above everything else. Now forget about that little wiggly creature inside the mother's womb. A woman's right to choose is paramount. Michelle said, I think the baby should have the right to choose life. You know, I mean, if you're into individual choices, I think the baby should have the right to choose life also. Unfortunately, they don't have much of a choice because they can't speak for themselves, Armenta said. So it's really something when we have the government going out trying to find an abortionist on island because there is no abortionist on island. And Jane Flores has made it clear that as far as she's concerned, no one should tell her what to do with her body, that no one should tell a woman what to do with her body. So Jane obviously has her agenda, and Governor Lulian Guerrero has her agenda also. But is that what we expect of our public servants, that if they have a personal agenda, that they put the mechanisms of the government to work to further their own agenda in disregard of what it is that is beneficial for the people, or in disregard of the sensitivities of the people, or in disregard of the wants of the people? So here's another quote that I kind of like before I move on a little bit. Dr. Thomas Shea was quoted in the June 12th Post. We all know who Dr. Tom Shea is. He's a household word. If you don't know where Tom Shea is, just wait till December 31, and you'll find him, because he'll be giving birth to the first birthday to the first child born on January 1. I don't know how many hundreds or maybe thousands of babies Tom Shea has brought into the world. He sponsored sports teams. He's just an all-around really good citizen. And it's I'm not in a position to evaluate OBGYNs, but in my estimation, from my vantage point, Tom Shea is the premier OBGYN doctor on Guam. So he ought to have something to say about babies in the womb, babies pre-birth. And this is what Tom Shea says. Dr. Tom Shea said he would like to see Adelup working to recruit other doctors, those who do procedures that will help us save lives. Pediatric surgeons, more interventional cardiologists, rheumatologists, etc. I couldn't agree more. If we're going to go out and beat the bushes for a doctor, let's bring in the kind of doctors that save lives, not the kind of doctors that end life in the womb. Okay, I got a short break here, and then we'll proceed on down to the big halftime show.
If you're driving, chances are you'll need gas soon. And by the growl in your tummy, a trip to the grocery store too. But don't just buy gas and groceries without getting double miles. Instead, apply for the new United credit card from First Hawaiian Bank and start earning double miles towards your next trip. Gas, groceries, getaway. With the new United credit card, apply at FHB.com. First Hawaiian Bank, member FDIC. Equal housing lender. Additional terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.
This is Ronnie. Ronnie is about to break his piggy bank.
Come on, piggy bank.
Ronnie wants to upgrade his smartphone.
And this piggy's gonna help me.
If Ronnie had signed up for GTA's handset payment option, he could have selected a new smartphone with an affordable monthly plan.
I could have what?
Exactly. Sign up for HBO at GTA and don't break the bank.
I'm sorry, piggy bank.
Terms and conditions apply. GTA, we start with you.
Do you know this song?
This is Back Home in Indiana, and it's always my cue to tell you about all of the exotic places I've been. Real Joe Cruz. I've been to some really exotic places. I've been to Indonesia. I've been to India. And best of all, I've been to Indiana, which is probably the most exotic of the three. And to top that, I've even been to Indianapolis, Indiana. And you don't even need a visa to get into Indiana. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to continue here on Jane Flores and Lulian Guerrero and their quest to bring an abortionist to Guam. So I guess I would have to I've determined that Jane Flores is the procurer of an abortionist. And I'm just glancing out of the side of out of the corner of my eye here, and I see Donna Mila Taitano on Facebook. How is it people keep using the argument that, quote, her body, her choice, but it's not her body she's killing? If that were true, then why do we stop people from killing themselves? In fact, it's a criminal act if a doctor gives a deadly dose of a painkiller. Yeah, I'm not persuaded by this, a woman's body. No, we shouldn't. According to some folks, I shouldn't even be talking about abortion because only women can talk about what a woman does with her body. And, of course, Donna's exactly right. The baby is not her body. It's somebody else's body. Okay, so I'm looking for the Facebook comments, and, of course, you could always chime in at 888-8255, 888-TALK, and Facebook Live is open, and you can always share this Facebook page with your friends and neighbors. So I'm going to read something to you and ask you if you could figure out where it came from. Legislative findings. The legislature finds that for the purposes of this act, life of every human being begins at conception, and that unborn children have protectable interests in life, health, and well-being. The purpose of this act is to protect the unborn children of Guam. As used in this declaration of findings, the term unborn children includes any and all unborn offspring of human beings from the moment of conception until birth at every stage of biological development. Who could guess where I might have found such a thing? Real Joe Cruz, you want to take a crack at it? Good answer, Real Joe Cruz. Kind of what I thought you'd say. Well, this actually comes from the laws of Guam. This provision and several others were put in place by Public Law 20-134 in March of 1990. The co-sponsors of the bill were a Senator Ted Nelson and a Senator Bel Areola. And the bill passed the legislature and was signed into law by Joseph Ada, governor of Guam. That law, Public Law 20-134, and the sections that it enacted in the criminal code are still on the books. I'll repeat, that law is still on the books. That our legislature has said that an unborn children includes any and all unborn offspring of human beings from the moment of conception until birth at every stage of biological development. And the legislature also said that every life begins at conception and that unborn children have protectable interests in life, health, and well-being. And this was Section 1 to a bill that criminalized abortion. And it's still on the books. Are you comfortable over there in your lazy boy? There, smart money? Yeah. I could just hear him. I can see him kind of rearing up off his chair and saying, yeah, but that's unconstitutional. So what? It's unconstitutional. Yeah, and it is unconstitutional. There was a case called Guam Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists versus ADA that held that statute was indeed unconstitutional. But that statute is still on the books. It has never been repealed by the august body known as the Guam Legislature. 1990 to 2019, let's see, going on, 30 years, Real Joe Cruz. It'll be 30 years next year. It's still on the books. So, public policy. This statute states the public policy of Guam. Now, because the statute is unconstitutional, it can't be cited as positive law. I should have warned the folks, get out your law and order notebooks here, people. Law and order?
Yeah, it kind of disappeared for a second. Let me see if I can find it again.
Program starts at 4, Real Joe Cruz.
Technical difficulties, sir.
Well, get out your law and order notebooks anyhow. There we go. Yeah. So positive law means enacted statute, right? Public policy means, well, I'm already up against our big halftime show here, so we'll be right back. After that big halftime show, we'll see you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Gunfire at a graduation party. I'm Richard Jordan, Fox News. The celebration in Philadelphia turning deadly.
At least one person was shot dead at the gathering and 7 others injured, 4 of them teens. Police have not revealed a motive for the shooting, and no arrests have been made so far. This weekend, Philadelphia saw at least 16 shootings citywide. 26 people in all were injured and 4 killed.
Fox's Jackie Ibanez. The White House says it's confident Iran is behind the attacks last week on a pair of oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Fox News Sunday.
There's no doubt. The intelligence community has lots of data, lots of evidence. The world will come to see much of it, but the American people should rest assured we have high confidence with respect to who conducted these attacks, as well as a half a dozen other attacks throughout the world over the past 40 days.
A senior U.S. official says Iran fired a missile at a U.S. drone that had been deployed to assist one of the tankers, but missed. President Trump again lashing out at the New York Times, denying a report about U.S. cyber attacks targeting Russia.
In 2 angry Saturday night tweets, President Trump accuses the New York Times of committing a virtual act of treason, also calling its report the U.S. has deployed new cyber tools against Russia's power grid, among other targets, untrue. Quoting officials with the National Security Council, the Times says those cyber attacks were meant to serve as a warning to President Vladimir Putin, and they had no concerns about the Times report. An indication, says the paper, that some of those intrusions were meant to be noticed by the Russians. 2 administration officials telling the Times they did not believe the president had been briefed about the operation. Out of concern, he'd put a stop to it or discuss it with foreign officials. Jane Metzler, Fox News.
Hong Kong police are working to clear the streets of protesters. The demonstrators are against a proposed law that would extradite suspected criminals to mainland China for trial. The legislation has been suspended. This is Fox News.
So what's the deal? Are you still paying for the right to have your checking account at your bank? Well, at Bank Pacific, we think it's our privilege, not our right. That's why we offer My Green Free Checking, where your monthly maintenance checking fees are zero. That's zero. And it comes with a free Visa check card and monthly green e-statements. My Green Free Checking. Bank Pacific today. Because having you as our customer, that's our privilege.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
When it comes to power and performance, nothing compares to Dodge. And right now at Cars Plus in Mighty, you can save thousands on many Dodge vehicles in stock during our Dodge Performance Days. Like a new 2019 Grand Caravan SE, save $4,250, or save $6,150 on a new Durango SXT. Looking for more power? Take home a new Charger SXT Plus today for only $37,689, or save over $7,000 on a new Challenger GT. Get more power and performance at Cars Plus in Mighty during Dodge Performance Days. Cars Plus, driven by you.
Florida passes a law making it illegal for cities to not comply with federal immigration orders.
Florida is officially banning sanctuary cities with a law signed Friday by Governor Ron DeSantis.
So this bill is very important to say Florida as a whole, we're going to cooperate to ensure the safety of our cities and our communities.
The Florida law requires that any law enforcement agency in the state be told that federal immigration officials are looking for people they might already have in custody. They are to turn them over for processing. The bill passed along party lines. Democrats opposing the law claim it will make undocumented persons fear the police. In Miami, Eben Brown, Fox News.
Former NBA player Anthony Grundy is facing charges in a deadly hit-and-run in Kentucky. The 40-year-old is charged with leaving the scene of an accident on June 7th and failing to render aid. He turned himself in Friday. Grundy played with the Atlanta Hawks in the 2005-2006 season. Some property owners in the Northwest are asked to help with the disposal of dead gray whales washing up on shore.
Mario Rivera owns waterfront property in Port Hadlock, Washington, where he accepted a request from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to let any whale carcasses that end up on his beach to stay there. Rivera is believed to be the first waterfront owner to accept this offer. The state's coast is has had about 30 whale bodies come ashore this year. That's the most in more than 2 decades. NOAA's fisheries say they no longer have the space to take them. The agency says landowners who agree to take their offer can not only help the natural environment, but the skeletons can also serve an educational purpose. Ken Duffy, Fox News.
O.J. Simpson is putting the rumors to rest. Simpson posted a video on Twitter Sunday afternoon saying he was never interested in Kris Jenner romantically, and he never got any indication that she had any interest in him. He says stories alleging that he's the father of Khloe Kardashian are bogus. I'm Richard Jordan, Fox News.
Ready to buy real estate on Guam? Congratulations! But what now? There are so many questions, so many things to do. Where do you start? The best place to start is to call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty, Guam's biggest name in real estate. They aren't the best because they're the biggest. They're the biggest because they're the best. Trust the name. Find out why. Call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty today. 888-2121. Trust the best.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Back for the second half of Tall Tales after having enjoyed that big halftime show that we have every day at 1700, 5 o'clock. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think anyone could contradict me. We have the best halftime show of any place here on the island. And if you want to disagree with me, submit your nomination. But I don't think you're going to be able to find anything. Okay, so the second half, we're continuing down with what I labeled in the card, Michelle Armenta versus Jane Flores. And it deals all of the things that I'm talking about here, all of the things I'm so worked up about, are our governor and Jane Flores using governmental resources to further their own agenda. Jane Flores, well, no one should dictate to a woman what she should do with her own body. And, of course, Lou has been pro-abortion. Lou Leon Guerrero, the governor, has been pro-abortion ever since. And it is a free country, and people are entitled to their own approach to things. As it's often said, people are entitled to their own opinions, which is true. And in our society, people have the freedom to speak out as to what their opinion is on various issues of the day. And people who run for public office can and probably should let the voters know what it is that they think is important and what they think is not important. Where I want to draw the line is, and I've referred to it on the program before, as a public official shouldn't spend much time and government resources scratching his own itch. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I were a basketball player. Well, I used to be a basketball player. And once upon a time, I was even tall. 6'4" isn't very tall anymore. But let's say that I really like to play basketball, and let's say that I have a governmental position where I spend money I can spend money on sports. So I spend all of the money that comes to me on basketball. I play basketball. I go out and play basketball myself. That's my personal agenda. And you guys that are interested in football and baseball, lacrosse, soccer, table tennis, sorry, come back some other time. We're into basketball here because that's my personal agenda. That's what I mean when I talk about scratching my own itch. And I don't like to see government officials spending a lot of government time and money and resources, in effect, scratching their own itch. Well, as far as Jane Flores and Lulian Guerrero are concerned, it's not very hard to figure out what their itch is. There are a couple of, well, at least Lou is a wokester. You know, she had the whole government house hung with rainbow flags and went through that whole routine. And now, because there's no abortionist on island, we're going to use government resources, and it has to be government money, to see if we could find somebody from off island and lure him to Guam. Now, Jane Flores has been tasked to do that, and she said that she's going to have a closed-door meeting with public health officials to work on this. Now, why would it have to be a closed-door meeting? And as I've told you before, Real Joe Cruz, you start talking about closed-door meetings, executive sessions, private documents. It's like seeing Ferdinand out there in the field snorting and pawing the ground and saying, hey, Fray Ferdinand, hey, you big bull out there, look here, here's a red flag. That's how it affects me. So what is it about the procurement of an abortionist that has to be done behind closed doors with the director of Public Health and Social Services? When you start talking about closed-door meetings, what you have done is you have turned on the speculation switch, Jane. You cause people to speculate. Why would she want to do that behind closed doors? Well, could it be because Public Health and Social Services dispenses Medicaid funds? In other words, funds to pay for medical expenses for the needy, the indigent, etc.? Could it be because Jane is hoping that she could persuade the director of public health to hire an abortionist to be on the staff of the Department of Public Health and Social Services? Why would she do that? Why would she want to have a closed-door meeting? It's kind of like a sequel to the CCU, CCU versus the Open Government Law last November. And then the what looked to everybody like a cover up after that when they got caught. Yeah, we can't raise salaries like doing it like that. But we're not going to show you, we're not going to let you listen to the recording. We're not going to let you see the minutes. Why not? Well, because privacy rights. Just causing everybody and his brother to say, what are they trying to hide? So here we go again. Closed-door meeting. When it comes to the government, people in government agencies their conduct is enabled by their organic statute, the statute that organizes the agency in which they work. And ordinarily, we would expect everyone who works for an agency to accomplish the mission of the agency in accordance with the organic statute of that agency. So as an example, if we're talking about the Department of Parks and Recreation, we wouldn't expect the Department of Parks and Recreation to be building a radio transmitter or TV transmitter tower for KGTF, would we? Because that wouldn't be within the bounds of the organic statute of Parks and Recreation. Well, Jane Flores is the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. And here's what the purposes of the, do I have it here? Now I'm going to have to pick this up online. I'll come back to this in a second. Yeah, you want to play that music for just a second, Real Joe Cruz? I thought I had this one, but I didn't, obviously. I thought I had it printed out. Just about there. Yeah, what I'm doing is I'm looking for the organic statute for the Bureau of Women's Affairs to see exactly what the mission of the Bureau of Women's Affairs is. And I thought I had printed it out so I could grab it really easily, but I hadn't. So I'm looking for it here in Title V of the Government Code. And there's an awful lot of stuff in Title V, but I'm just about there, so bear with me just for a couple more seconds. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll come back to that during the break and find it. In the meantime, what I'm kind of building up to here is this idea of, and I will be able to demonstrate that Jane Flores is ultra-virus the authority of the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, and that it's not a mission of that department nor of the entire government, as far as I can determine, to go out and beat the bushes and find an abortionist to come to Guam because we don't have one, any more than it's their job to go out and find an armorer and bring the armorer to Guam, which I facetiously mentioned during the Second Amendment portion of the program. But the U.S. government has dealt with this, and it has dealt with this in the form of something called the Hyde Amendment, which is a legislative provision barring the use of federal funds to pay for abortion except to save the life of a woman or if the pregnancy arises from incest or rape. Legislation including the Hyde Amendment generally restricts the use of funds allocated for the Department of Health and Human Services and consequently has significant effects involving Medicaid recipients. And that's kind of what made me wonder, why are we having a closed-door meeting with the Director of Public Health and Social Services? Is it some way to loophole? Loophole is the key word. Is it some way to attempt to find some way to find a loophole in the Hyde Amendment so we could use federal funds to pay for abortions? Or is it some way to use local funds in the same regard? In any case, it seems to me that what we need here is a local equivalent of the Hyde Amendment. Now I've got Joe on the line. Now, this isn't you, is it? No, this is another Joe, not the real Joe Cruz. Okay. Good afternoon, Joe. And we got about 4 Joes on the line.
Is it possible that the governor has some sort of executive privilege to request that Mrs. Flores do such tasks? Well, I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar.
What's the question again, Joe?
Would it be somewhere? Would it be the privilege of the governor to request that Mrs. Flores take such action to task?
Well, the governor can probably tell anybody to do anything, and unless what the governor directs is illegal or violative of a particular statutory scheme, it's okay. But that's not the point I'm making.
That's not what happened here with Mrs. Flores.
Well, I don't know, because the way it happened was we found out that Jane Flores was doing this from the international media. The story broke first in stateside and international papers. It didn't appear in the local press.
It's one of those aha moments. Okay, thanks for your time, Bob.
Say again?
I said, thanks for your time. It's one of those aha moments.
Yeah, really.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Bob, thanks.
Yeah. So going on with that, and then it appeared in the local media. And it was kind of like, again, when things like that happened, the speculation light goes on. Well, why was the governor trying to do it that way? Was she trying to slip one under the radar and find the abortionist before we knew about it here? Don't know. But anyhow, I have that statute in front of me, and this is what the duties of the Bureau, of the Charter for the Bureau of Women's Affairs. A, to formulate policies to eliminate gender discrimination throughout the government of Guam and the private sector. Now, of course, this statute was written or was enacted before we really knew what the word gender was, when we thought that there were only 2 genders, male and female, and we thought that gender was just a kind of a fancy way of saying sex. That was before we were woke. We know better now. B, to study and make recommendations on issues of particular concern to women and on the widening the access of persons of both genders to all positions and aspects of the community. C, to review and submit recommended legislation to the legislature addressing gender inequities in current laws. D, to be responsible for closely monitoring issues and legislation relating to gender discrimination and to advise the governor and legislature of issues on such discrimination, along with proposed recommendations for action. E, to select representatives to attend national conventions and other forums where issues concerning gender discrimination are discussed and acted upon. So having listened to that, what is the thrust of the mission of the Bureau of Women's Affairs? It's to eliminate gender discrimination. That's what it's all about. If it's anything, it's an anti-gender discrimination thing. In other words, it's a let's do what we can to end discrimination against women because they're women. That's all it is. If you read the whole thing, that's all it is. And there, obviously the A word doesn't appear there, and there's nothing that even implies that the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs has any charter whatsoever to tell women what to do with their bodies, which is exactly what Jane Flores is doing. Yeah, it's okay for Jane Flores to do it. It's just not okay for anybody else to do it. So it's all right for Jane Flores to say, well, if you want an abortion, that's fine. Don't let any other consideration get involved. So that's the charter. And again, that suggests to me that what we need here is a local equivalent of the Hyde Amendment, so that what we're saying, that in accordance with what I just explained is the public policy of the territory, we're not using government resources and government money to advance the personal agendas of the governor and of the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Another piece of paper here I was looking for. Yeah, so I would humbly suggest that we need a statute that says something along the lines of no department, agency, or officer of this territory shall pay or approve for payment from public funds any amount or amounts for procuring an abortion, as you were, an abortionist. So that procuring an abortionist is not something that government employees do. And we don't spend money on procuring an abortionist. If an abortionist moves to Guam, well, he moves to Guam. It is, after all, a free country, and if the abortionist is an American citizen, he has the constitutional ability to travel anywhere where the American flag flies, including Guam. So if he wants to come here, if she wants, wait a minute, let me get this right. If they want to come here, fine. But I don't see that it's the mission of our government to go out and beat the bushes, put any or require government employees to be procurers of abortionists or get into this angle of it at all. And that's exactly what we've got with the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. She said she sent an email to Planned Parenthood. Maybe what we ought to do is take up a collection and buy her the video of the movie Unplanned. If you happen to see the movie Unplanned, it really laid the whole Planned Parenthood Incorporated machine wide open. It's not a very nice organization. The way it was portrayed in that movie was that they have a profit center, and their profit center is abortion. The lady who was in charge of Planned Parenthood in Bryan, Texas, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, was schooling the employee of Planned Parenthood who had been right in the thick of things until she saw an ultrasound of a baby in the womb. And she realized, she said to her, "Oh my goodness, what have I been doing? This is awful." But before that happened, the lady in charge of the Bryan Planned Parenthood office explained to the protagonist here, who said, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought we would be rendering all kinds of women's health service, but the emphasis is on abortion. And the lady said, well, if you go to McDonald's, they sell a lot of things. They sell hamburgers and fries, etc., and soft drinks. But they break even on the hamburger and fries. They make their profit off soft drinks. For us, abortion is the soft drinks. It's really an eye-opening movie. It's too bad that everyone couldn't see it. And then Planned Parenthood was caught up in that scandal about whether or not they sell the parts of aborted babies to others. Now, this was pretty much a national scandal also. So Planned Parenthood, if they're not here now, it's not the kind of organization that Gita should be given tax incentives to for them to locate here. It's not an admirable organization at all. But that's where we are. Closed-door meetings with the Director of Public Health inviting Planned Parenthood to come, breaking the news internationally and nationally before we find out about it here, and tasking the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs to go out and procure an abortionist, leading me to pretend that I'm the guy in Treasure Sierra Madre. All you other movie buffs probably remember the scene in Treasure of Sierra Madre when Humphrey Bogart and Tim Holt and I can't remember the other actor's name. I went into Mexico, and they thought they could find gold in Mexico. They found a little bit, and then a group of banditos rode up and stopped them in their tracks. And the bandito said, "You're going to have to give us your gold." And the Humphrey Bogart character said, and he said, "We are rurales. We are the police." And Humphrey Bogart said, "If you're the police, show us your badges." And the outlaw took out his gun and fired into the air 3 or 4 times and said, "Badges? We don't need no stinking badges. Here's our badges." Great scene from the movies. If you've never seen Treasure Sierra Madre, it's watching it just for that one scene, real Joe Cruz. Yeah. So, recasting myself in the role of that bandito, I'd have to say this: Planned Parenthood, we don't need no stinking Planned Parenthood or abortionist or whatever. Okay, we got the 7th inning stretch coming up, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to have to stick with this till the end of the program.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
We all have habits, some good ones and some that may not be so good. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show with Daryl Taggarty, we look at a way to create new and positive habits in an easy, almost automatic way.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We know too well the inconvenience of not having power after a storm. You worry about food in the freezer going bad. Nights get hot. It's hard finding comfort when going to sleep. These are realities. But with solar and battery storage from Micronesia Renewable Energy, these realities can be a thing of the past. The solar works during the day and the batteries power your home at night. Call 632-2613 to see how solar plus battery storage can make life a little more convenient. MRE, the smarter choice.
So I hope you all had a good stretch there. Did you stretch for the 7th inning stretch? Okay. Okay, so back, I'm just looking at an article that appeared in the Daily News for June 11. The administration is looking into recruiting a doctor to provide abortions here, said Jane Flores, director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Flores said she'll be having a closed-door meeting with the Department of Public Health and Social Services officials this week to address the issue. They'll meet to talk about a plan to recruit a doctor, Flores said. The meeting is in response to the fact that no abortions have been reported since Dr. William Freeman retired last year in May. So something must be wrong. We haven't had any abortions reported since last May. So the government has to take prompt action. Yeah. Hey, we got a serious problem here. There have been no abortions reported since last May. We've got to get we've got to work on our numbers here. What kind of an island is this with no abortions? That's the mentality that we're dealing with here. With this, let's be procurers of an abortionist. Governor Lulian Guerrero has said she is pro-choice. Now, pro-choice is the polite cocktail party way of saying, I'm pro-abortion. I believe that women should be able to have abortions if they want. Flores said she is the official Leon Guerrero was referring to, and the recruitment plan is still in the preliminary stages. When asked if the doctor who will be recruited will work for the government or a private practice, Flores said she doesn't know yet. Let me repeat that. When asked if the doctor who will be recruited will work for the government or a private practice, Flores said she doesn't know yet, suggesting that, yeah, that's an alternative, isn't it? Yeah. Dr. Anthony Abortionist, an abortionist at Public Health, said that his publicly supported clinic is now open, and women who want an abortion should call Public Health. Yeah. The more I can see why they wanted to break this off island, because the more you know about it, the worse it becomes. Okay, the last time we talked about this, I had something that I wanted to get into, and I wasn't able to finish it up. And I was reading from an article, the title of which was "The Supreme Court in 1973 Knew Personhood Could Kill Roe versus Wade." And the beginning of the article says that, "I have often said that if ultrasound pictures of the unborn had been available in 1973, the Roe versus Wade decision would have been quite different. It's hard to talk about lumps of tissue and collections of cells when one can really see a leg kicking, a hand reaching, a mouth sucking, or listening to a heartbeat." Remember that? And then a quote from Roe versus Wade. "We need not resolve the difficult question when life begins, when those trained in the respective disciplines of medicine, philosophy, theology are unable to arrive at any consensus. The judiciary at this point in the development of man's knowledge is not in a position to speculate as to the answer." In other words, the court in Roe versus Wade said, we don't know when life begins. But since we don't know, the Supreme Court used the Joey Duenas defense. We didn't know. Nobody told us that life began at conception. We didn't know. And because what we didn't know, then it's okay to say that you could have, as Justice Blackmun said, abortion during the first trimester. No harm, no foul. That's what she said. Okay, and then I was going to get into, last time, I was going to get into what Morning Joe said. Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough, a former Republican member of the House of Representatives, has a talk show on PMSNBC at 8 o'clock our time, 6 a.m. New York time, called Morning Joe. And even PMSNBC Morning Joe host Joe Scarborough recently had to admit, you are seeing poll numbers move on abortion for banning abortions after 20 weeks. He went on, why? Because for the past decade, younger Americans have been going in and they've been seeing 3D imaging where they can look into the womb. If some activist said, your child is a lump, I must tell you, I've had 4 kids. I've never once had a doctor go to me, we've got your lump. Let me show you your lump. Look at your lump's profile. This is an example of science and technology changing that is going to change the politics of abortion. And of course, the left, the pro-abortion people, fight these laws that require a candidate for abortion to look at these ultrasound images. They fight that tooth and nail because it destroys their rap that it's really not a person in there, it's just a lump of flesh. This is an example of science technology changing. That is going to change the politics of abortion. This is an issue that is culturally going to change. Americans, younger voters, are going to become more conservative on abortion because they see their child very early in the womb. Interesting. But not if your personal agenda is, oh, I'm pro-life. I'm pro-life. And, you know, we have a serious problem here. We have problems here on Guam. You know, we're a small island. We don't have natural resources. We're a long way from any other country. We have our share of problems. But right now we're dealing with a really serious one. We haven't had a reported abortion since May. That means we haven't had an abortion reported for a whole year. We've got to do something about that. It's kind of like a Yogi Berra, you know. I'm not in a slump. I just ain't hitting. Okay, so then I also touched on Kirsten Gillibrand, who is who is a candidate for president. She's a senator from New York, and Kirsten Gillibrand says that there are some issues that have such moral clarity that we have as a society decided that the other side is not acceptable, and hinted abortion now falls in that category. As first reported by the Washington Free Beacon, Senator Gillibrand told the Iowa newspaper, "Imagine saying that it's okay to appoint a judge who's racist or anti-Semitic or homophobic. Asking someone to appoint someone who takes away basic human rights of any group of people, I don't think those are political issues anymore. I don't either. To take away the basic human rights of an unborn child, that is not a political issue. That's a moral issue." She then continued saying, "And we believe in this country in the separation of church and state. And I respect the rights of every American to hold their religious beliefs true to themselves. But our country and our Constitution has always demanded that we have a separation of church and state." Well, let's just take a look and see what our Constitution says about separation of church. This is another one of those everybody knows, right? So once again, if you had the U.S. Constitution in a Word version and you used your search and replace features, you won't find the word separation of church and state anywhere in the U.S. Constitution. Religion is, however, mentioned in the Constitution. I think that's pretty important, because other social aspects of the population, as far as I can remember, are not mentioned. But religion is so important that it has a prominent place in the First Amendment. And this is what it says: "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." The free exercise of religion. So a lot of folks would hang their anti-abortion argument on religion, Catholicism especially, because there's no room at all for a practicing Catholic to favor abortion, to be the procurer of an abortionist. It doesn't work for a Catholic. And I go along with that, but I don't even need to get to that point. For me, I don't want to ever be in a situation where government officials are forcing me to pretend something that I know is not true to be true, what I call forced pretending. Others would make references to natural law. You know, if you look at natural law, abortion is not part of natural law. two men getting together and saying we're married is not part of natural law, because two men, try as they might, are not going to be able to procreate. Of course, looking on the bright side, the last thing they have to worry about is whether or not either one of them is going to get an abortion. So that's half of what the First Amendment says. The other part, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. This is a little bit complicated, and it goes back to England, which England has an established religion. The Church of England is the established religion of England. In Denmark, it's Lutheranism, which means that the government gives money to these state religions. That's what an establishment of religion is. And there were times in some countries where the government would make you go to church whether you wanted to or not. So when the Constitution was drawn up, the founders said, no establishment of religion at all. There will be no state religion. And that's about all it meant. And it didn't apply to the states. At the time the Constitution was ratified, about half the colonies had established religions. The last state to abandon an establishment of religion was Massachusetts, and that was 1820. But, the politicians in black robes have piled a lot of baggage on that section of the First Amendment, and like a right of privacy, they found stuff that isn't there. But this idea of church and state is wrong. And if there is a separation of church and state, the reason that we adhere to it is not to protect the state, which doesn't need any protection. It's to protect the church, that the government cannot get involved in the affairs of a religion. And I can give you several examples if that becomes necessary. And I notice I got a phone call there, Real Joe Cruz, that you might want to answer. So that's what Kirsten Gillibrand says. Just repeating something, it's another one of those everybody knows. But what everybody knows is something that's been said over and over again, but it just isn't correct, is it, Marcus?
No, it isn't. Baruch Hashem, praise God. Sijuvas Masi. That's you're absolutely right. Our founders of the Constitution of the United States of America were wise, and they didn't mean to get rid of God. They just didn't want religion, man-made stuff, to be governed by a bunch of politicians. But if we really think about education, there shouldn't be a Department of Education within the government, because it used to be a part of the church, and it used to be a lot of things, that charities do better than, look at Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He's done such a great job of doing, wiping out polio, helping Africans, helping Americans, and everything else, people can do a lot more than they realize if they just allow themselves to follow the right way and not just give up and say, oh, we'll just turn it over to the government. Somehow they will miraculously be moral and just and fair, when in fact that unfortunately is not the case a lot of times.
So it's certainly not the case when our governor devotes governmental resources for the procurement of an abortionist. Wouldn't you agree, Marcus?
Yeah, unfortunately, and in our name and in our resources and in our dime, in our time, it's terrible, actually.
So those folks that read stories in the off-island and overseas newspapers about Guam, Guam is looking for an abortionist. Wow, what kind of place is that? I thought there were a lot of Catholics over there. I guess they've all caved in.
Unfortunately, and to see, the matriarchs, who, I thought it would be a good thing, because they tend to have, more maternalistic type caring for the families and everything. But to see what's going on lately with some of these women leaders is, I don't know what to say. I can't believe it.
Did you know that we have 10 females in our legislature, Marcus?
Hungan, I do, and I thought that was going to be a great thing.
Yeah. Well, we certainly heard enough about it, didn't it?
Yeah. And even in the justice system, we have a majority in all three houses, branches, that, and unfortunately, they're not living up to the matriarchal type principles and beliefs of family and, community. And
you know, the next thing they're going to be trying to take over talk radio.
Yeah, because, they want to get rid of God. The godless don't like the godly.
That's true.
And unfortunately, that, so in the scriptures, it talks about we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and high places. And wow, it really seems like that's, it's really true today, unfortunately.
Yep. Well, thanks for...
People like you and others are bringing the light onto the subject and keeping us informed, because others have been just deluding us and pretending they're doing, it's whitewashing or rearranging the chairs on the deck, and making it look like they've done a lot when they really, unfortunately, the governor and Madeline have been working hard against Congressman St. Nicholas in trying to fund the bill that they actually got approved, and they on our dime are trying to deny funding so that people can get war reparations.
True enough.
Why? And the only thing I can think of, and what I've always been heard and was told, is follow the money. Audit the money trail, and you'll find the answers.
A search for the headlines, Marcus.
Yeah.
Well, once again, thanks for chiming in this afternoon.
God bless.
Okay.
Buen
provecho. So I'm looking out of the corner of my eye here, and Barbara Lita chimes in and says, "Amen, sis." I don't know who she's following up on what somebody else said, I guess. And she says, her body, her choice, but the baby's body, no choice. The unborn becomes legally disposable humans, tragically. Pro-choice is simply a declaration to destroy a vulnerable person in what is supposedly the safest place, the mother's womb. Yeah, I agree 100%. So we're going to shift now from the church and state angle to the church. I've handled this. I've done this so far without any reference to religion at all, and I've explained my aversion to government or even society trying to force me to pretend something is true when it isn't true. But for the last 10 minutes, maybe we'll talk a little bit about religion, which is extremely important and has a bearing on this subject.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
Hey, welcome to this Subway ad for the new club collection. How do you want it?
I'll take a book club.
Absolutely.
So, last week we sunk our teeth into Subway's meaty new release, the Steak Club.
I didn't finish it yet.
Not again, Sandra. This week it's the new Southwest Chicken Club, also by Subway. No spoilers, but there's a tasty twist.
Jalapeno cheddar bread and guacamole?
Sandra, get out. Subway, make it what you want.
Good ending.
Limited time only at participating restaurants.
Okay, so here we are heading down the home stretch as you were at a call to the post at Churchill Downs, Lexington, Kentucky, for another exciting running of the Kentucky Derby here on Tall Tales. It means I've got about, 5 more minutes, something like that, till the plaintive strains of Ravel's Bolero drowned out my thunderous voice and the ever appropriate tones of the voice of my sidekick here, the real Joe Cruz. So I've talked about the abortion thing in a secular manner up until now, and I think I clarified the separation of church and state angle and what it really means. And my own aversion, the lack of necessity to reach for the religious lever and an argument about abortion, because I am just averse to enforced pretending. And that's what the pro-abortionists want me to do. They want me to pretend that the baby inside the mother's womb is not a baby. It's not a person. It has no rights. Its life can be disposed of if it turns out to be convenient for the mother, or maybe the mother's boyfriend, or maybe the mother's parents, or maybe a lot of things. But the interests in the life of that baby are inconsequential in the face of slogans such as a woman has a right to do with what she wants to with her own body, and I'm in favor of women's health issues, and don't try to interfere with my reproductive rights. But Catholic religion is involved, and our Catholic Church here is not as involved as it could be. We did have an anti-abortion rally on Friday at Government House. It was covered by the papers, and by KUAM on Friday night. I suppose PNC will get around to covering it tonight. But here's what bishops in other jurisdictions have done. Springfield, Illinois. Springfield, Illinois is the capital of Illinois. Now, real Joe Cruz probably thought it was Chicago, but it's not Chicago. It's Springfield, Illinois. It's what folks in Chicago refer to as downstate. But Chicago is the classic case of Chicago is the dog and downstate is the tail. All the political power is in Chicago. And, of course, that's where most of the lefties are, in the big cities, right? So the state legislature meets in Springfield, and here's what the Bishop of Springfield did. Bishop Thomas John Paprosky has ruled that state legislators who are working to pass Illinois' new abortion bill may not present themselves for communion in his diocese, and that priests are expressly forbidden from giving the Eucharist to both the Senate President and the Speaker of the House. Now, even in the absence of the bishop coming out and say that, you know, that's the rule. If you are assisting in a procurement of an abortion, you shouldn't be taking communion. I suppose there are some Catholics out there who are using the Joey Duenas defense. I didn't know. Nobody told me. But it wouldn't hurt for the bishop himself to come out and debunk, to override the Joey Duenas defense and tell people, you know, this procurement of an abortionist is not within the realm of the Catholic faith. Okay, so it's been another really exciting issue of Tall Tales. The real Joe Cruz and I will be back tomorrow at 1600, 4 o'clock. See you then.